Hello everybody, hope you're having a great day and welcome to today's video on the channel. And in today's video, I have a guide for y'all showing you how to play Storm in Wizard101. If you guys find this video useful at all, a like rating and a sub is always appreciated. I do try to post every day, if not every other day. And I do stream every day over on Twitch, typically starting around 5:30 Central Time now. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get right to the video, y'all. Alright, so for the PvP part of the video, there are a couple of things you need to know right now in the meta. So, right now, Storm is not so great. That's the best and most polite way I can put it, okay? At max level PvP, at least, alright? So you have to make up for that in some way. Now you're probably like, okay, Liam, well, how do you make up for that, right? So typically on a Storm right now, you have one of three options to win a match. One, you go for a gambit, and you just nuke your opponent, okay? Two, you just strike and spam hits and hope they fall over and die, which does work sometimes depending on the situation and the matchup. Or three, you have to heal, okay? Now, obviously, this depends solely on who you go against and how your deck is cycling in that matchup, obviously, right? So, for example, if I'm playing a regular ice player who's doing like Frostbite, A-Bomb, I'm gonna want to heal a lot with Berry, get Bubble with Sanctuary, and Dark and Stormy to outvalue them, right? Or if I'm playing like, I don't know, like a Death or a Life, I might want to go for a Weakness Gambit like the Oni with Threefold and Infection. Something you're not gonna want to do is Blade against like a Death or an Ice if you're a Storm, right? Because those schools will obviously curb stomp you. So you have to know the matchup you're against and how they are going to play, right? If they're a myth, are they trap stacking a lot? Are they doing an overtime strat, right? You can typically figure that out within the first 3 to 4 rounds, I would say, if you pay attention to their moves and look at their pips. For an example, if a myth is trap stacking, they're probably not going to change their pips because all they do is click the same card every turn and don't really think much, right, with a PvE strat. But if the myth has like a fire pip, you know, a myth pip, a death pip, and like an ice pip, they're probably playing regular and trying to go for different things. So it's important to identify what's going on right away as a Storm. And it's very important compared to the other schools because you do not have room to make any mistakes on this school right now, especially with how the current game design is. If you make the smallest mistake, right, if you cross the line by half a millimeter, you will lose by like 4,000 health on this school. It's pretty bad, okay? So you have to try and mitigate your mistakes and how bad the mistake is to even stand a chance of winning right now on a Storm. So once you figure out what's going on those first couple of rounds, you have to figure out what your plan is, okay? Am I going for a Blade Gambit? Okay. Am I going for a Weakness Oni Gambit? Okay. Am I going to strike and kick their ass? Okay. Am I going to heal and, like, you know, play for a strike later on? You need to figure out what you're going to do against their plan in your match, okay? So I'm going to go over every matchup right now and how each school plays against a Storm. And I'm going to kind of try and talk to you guys about what you're going to do probably and what to expect. So starting off with a mirror matchup, Storm versus Storm. You don't really want to Blade because Banshee is really, really good right now. And if you let a Storm Banshee you, they can Oni in one round and, well, you just fall over and die, right? So that's not very good. So in a mirror matchup, if you are planning to go for a Gambit, you're going to want to go for a Threefold, okay? Now, if a Threefold doesn't work or you do not want to go for a Gambit, your probably only other option is gonna be to strike and like spam catch and caddies and like a base Oni or like a base Scion. Also packing like Clanker as well and going for a stun combo are extremely powerful and extremely helpful in a mirror matchup. You're not going to want to heal with a berry or Dark and Stormy unless you know you can get away with it, like if their pips are low, because Triton could really kick your ass in a mirror matchup. Next up, we have Fire. Now, Fires do one of two things right now. They either trap or they just try to hit. Okay? Now, I would argue right now, hit Fire is pretty good against Storm. Okay? Trap stack Fire can be a decent against Storm. But if you set your deck with Scales or like a Will Cast, Scales pet like I have here, you know, on screen, pretty solid pet. Combine that with Blades and Centaur, you can pretty much beat a trap stacker 9 times out of 10, I would say. So if you do get a Fire that's just trapping every turn, like the Myth example, you're going to want to obviously stun block early on. You're going to want to, you know, Dual Blade, Storm Blade, LD Blade, Scales if your hand doesn't give you any of that to buy time to get those buffs, okay? And then you're going to want to Centaur to take off their traps so they can't kill you and cover your good Storm Blades for your Gambit, right? And at that point, they're going to have to start shielding because they're dead, right? So once they start doing that, you Scales again to knock off more traps on yourself, right? And take off their shields. And once they've lost all the tempo and all the control, that's when you strike and just completely delete them off the face of the earth, okay? That's how you beat a trap stack Fire on a Storm. Now, regular Fire is a bit tricky because Fire actually does good damage per pip and they actually pierce all of your resist. A regular Fire, typically what has worked for me, at least, is going a lot more into the healing area. So if I pack Sanctuary, a lot of berries, and I do play for my second Shad to go for a Dark and Stormy, you will win this matchup a lot more of the time. Dark and Stormy kicks S'more's ass, you know, any day of the week, okay, guys? So if you play for this Shad and play for a better trade, you will almost always win that matchup, okay? Also using Berry to counter, like, an Efreet, like, you know, if you let them Efreet you, but then you're gonna Berry twice anyways, right? That's also a pretty good move. Taking Caddies as well are extremely good and pivotal in this matchup. You are gonna have to watch out for Fires who have Dark Pact pet, because that will make Catalan a very bad move. So you gotta be very careful with that and play around the Dark Pact if they have that deadly Nullity Dragon. You also could just, you know, Blade if you want, or Weakness Gambit, or Strike and spam hits if you want to. But personally, for me, I would say the safest route to beating Fire is just simply by going the healing route, right? Because again, if you Blade, Banshee's a very good counter. If you Weakness, they can Fortress, and like it's just kind of annoying because it's, you know, a lot of tempo and a lot of debuff. Fortress is, so I've had a higher win rate against regular Fires by simply just leaning more into the healing identity of Storm. Next up, we're going to talk about Ice here. Ice actually isn't that bad of a matchup for Storm if you are healing a lot, okay? That's a very big if, alright guys? Because if you don't heal against an Ice, they're literally just going to outdamage you and you will die before they die because of the current game design system, okay? So you have to spam Berry and Dark and Stormy, like it, you know, your life depends on it. Literally, it does, okay? So that's pretty much all you can do because you can't Blade, you can't Weakness because Blades and Weaknesses get countered by Ice on their Shambo Wheel, right? So you basically just want to play for a lot of Catalans, a lot of Berries, a lot of Hidden Bubbles. Maybe a Catch could be good if their pips are low, your pips are high. You have a lot of tempo to work with, a lot of time to work with, right? That could be pretty good. Or even catching an Ice off guard with like a Myth Banshee when they A-bomb is also pretty helpful. You can also dual school with Minotaur Spellement to, you know, take away their shield gambit they might be going for and get some pretty good traps onto them that you can use to obviously try to kill them faster. So yeah, you're gonna want to have a lot of bubbles. Again, this is a reason why Sanctuary is very important on a Storm right now, because Ice has the Blimp pet, which is extremely oppressive and offensive for them. So packing Sanctuary is almost like a defensive move for you, and it also helps you a lot in gain value in that matchup. And that's pretty much the only way you're ever going to win this. Next up, we have Balance. Now, this is your worst matchup, arguably, aside from Death. Balance is really good because they can just spam hit you and do more damage per pip because of the current, again, meta. So what you have to do in this matchup is you have to go for an Oni and you have to heal. You can't go for a Blade Gambit because Eye of Vigilance is too good and Banshee is too good, and they also pack Quake. It's just all that stuff is too oppressive, so it's not worth it. Trust me, I've tried. So what you have to do is play around threefolds and the fact that you have more copies than they do counters. Okay, so what I like to do is maybe try and take an early game caddy or a catch, and then cover my bases, you know, with a stun block, maybe a set shield, maybe weakness in tower, gain some pips, you know, set up the gambit with threefold, maybe bubble, you know, just play very tactical early on, cover the bases. And once they're burning and hydraing, you know, many times over and over, you're going to want to bury to stay in the game. Okay. Then once you're burying and you're safe, that's when you need to pivot into going for a Shrike into a Gambit. I've tried going for the Gambit extremely early on against a Balance, and it simply doesn't work. Because Fortress, again, provides too much value with the amount of resist and health and block they have. So you have to run them out of counters and resources, stay alive, and then you have to set up the Gambit and go for a Strike later on in the game after you've healed to catch them slipping, basically. Next up, we have Death. Now, Death is, like, this is like, oh my god, this matchup makes me want to off myself. Okay, so this matchup, they will spam threefold and spam shields. And you literally can't really do much, simply because the counters you have for weaknesses and shields just aren't that good, right? You can use them, but they will always gain tempo and they always gain on you. So it's a very tough matchup, and the best way I can recommend to winning this matchup is weaknessing yourself and going for an Oni and using Jin's Vexation as your counter to counter their weaknesses and also debuff them and also threaten your Storm Oni Gambit. You can't really Blade against Death because, again, Banshee will kick your butt. You can heal. Pirate isn't really used too much right now, but some people do pack that still. So you can heal, but be very, you know, careful with that. Be very cautious with when you heal with Berry, Dark and Stormy. Packing Sanctuary as well is pretty helpful in this matchup, I would say. But yeah, a lot of the time, this matchup is just really, really horrible. And all you really can do is wait for them to Vampire you and then use your Fortress, your Snowman, or your Vexation to counter the Vampire. And just as a general rule of thumb, you're never really going to want to Strike against Death if they have threefolds on you, because Vampire will just hit and stun you for 2 rounds, basically. So you can't do anything in Strike. So that's pretty much all you can do is, you know, maybe go for some Catalans, maybe heal if they overextend, right? And try and go for that Oni Gambit and just really try to counter them and outpace them. And like, you want to always try and have more pips than them, right? This is something I've learned the past couple of months, right? Because your counters and your cards are so bad against them, you need to always be at least like 4 pips ahead of them, right? Even though you might be playing better, you always need to have more pips than them, simply because they just have better cards than you do. So keep your pips up, try to counter well, try to go for an Oni. Don't Strike if you know they can just Vampire and stun you for 2 rounds, okay? And always wait for them to Vampire you before you use your Vexation, your Fortress, or your Snowman, because that way you're at least gaining value on them. Next up, we have Life. Now, this is supposed to be one of Storm's best matchups, but right now it's actually not a very good matchup, unfortunately. So, yes, you could Blade and go for a Blade Gambit. You'd think that's good, but Earthquake exists, and they pack like 4 of them, Life's do. So, blading is not a great idea, usually. That being said, there are some combos you can do I will talk about later on in a moment here. Typically, weaknesses aren't that good because they just spam hit and heals or heal through them anyways. You could try to go for them. You know, I've done it once or twice against a Jade. Uh, it's not very easy, but you can make it work. And the playstyle I'm ultimately going to end up recommending is just the strike with your brain off and spam hits with like Triton, catch, maybe a caddy, maybe a base hit, you know, that kind of thing. Maybe bury in Dark and Stormy if you took too much damage from Lash or their Goat Monks, stuff like that before you strike, you know. That's the best way to go about it, because at least that way you literally just can't really get countered and stuff like that. And the only thing I can really recommend in this matchup, guys, is again, like the death example, you need to keep your pips ahead of them and at least stay a turn or two ahead of them in terms of your pips. This is because, again, this is simply because their cards are just better than yours. The base cards are better than the counters right now. Okay? If you Triton and they regenerate, they just regenerate again probably, or shield and regenerate again. Okay? So it's just not really that good. You're gonna always want to have pips to be able to Triton into something, or I don't know. If I'm at max pips with a Strike, I can King Artorias, but I need to be able to Triton out of that because they're going to regen my entire Strike to hit off, right? So just try to, you know, maybe get Bubble, you know, Galvanic, get a good hit and Bubble combo with a Strike, maybe a catch combo as well, which is extremely good. You just gotta, you know, tie all those combos together and strike a lot against a life. That's the best way you could beat somebody that's like jading right now in the current meta. And something I like to do as well, I don't think I've ever shared this on stream, but basically, there's actually a little cool combo you can do on a Storm, and I might make a whole video about this, but basically, right, what you can do is if you have an Ellie Blade or a Dual Blade on, okay, that extra Life Blade or Random Blade is very powerful because if you Strike into a Catch or a Triton, you get 2 blades, but you get a Pierce Blade back. So if you just Strike into a Catch or a Triton, you have 3/4 of, sorry, 3/4 of your Gambit setup. Okay? So if you just simply have that extra Life Blade off of the, you know, the Dual Blade or the Ellie Blade, you can actually threaten just a double damage Scion. Combine that with the fact you might have Bubble, you might have an Aura as well, right? That's just a crap ton of pressure, right? So that's a neat little combo you can do against them. Lastly, against Myth, this school is really hard for Storm to beat. It's almost like a counter matchup, it feels like. This school is hard to beat because all they need to do is get a single buff Jhin onto you and you're dead. Also, they can just spam traps and you're very fragile. They only need like 3 buffs to kill you with like a Yaga, right? Or 2 with a tree. So it's just the amount of pressure and the not many buffs they need to kill you. And the fact that you actually can't debuff them at all with like a Banshee or a Weakness or a Tower without them like still killing you, it just makes it for like a nightmare of a time. So the best way I can recommend for killing a trap stack Myth is, again, kind of something like Fire, where you are going to want to take the initiative, you're going to want to Blade a lot, maybe Scales at a good time if they go for a Jhin and a Scion at the same time. That's extremely powerful. Do that at a good time. That's probably your best pivot move available to you in that matchup. And then again, Centaur, if they, you know, trap and you have the pips combo into a Scion, Strike, and just kick their ass, okay? Now, a regular Myth is pretty tough to beat as well. Because, again, they can shield every turn and then just get a single buff to Jhin, and you just get deleted off the face of the earth, okay? So it's not a very easy matchup with that. I would say it's almost unwinnable. But what you can do is pack Earthquake on a Storm. This has helped me a lot against Myths that just Blade stack and Shield stack. Earthquake is the only good counter you have available to beat that, because again, you can't really keep up with removing the shield.